In 1977, a series of violent crimes terrorized the Ohio State University campus. Multiple women were kidnapped, robbed, and sexually assaulted. The police eventually arrested a 22-year-old man named Billy Milligan, but when psychiatrists examined him, they discovered something that would change legal history forever. Billy Milligan didn't have one personality, he had 24, and the court had to answer an impossible question. If Billy didn't commit these crimes, if other people living inside his mind did them, how do you prosecute someone who doesn't remember being there? William Stanley Milligan was born in Miami Beach, Florida in 1955. His early childhood was marked by severe trauma and abuse. His father committed suicide when Billy was just 8 years old, a traumatic event that would be the first crack in his developing psyche. But things got worse. His mother remarried a man named Chalmer Milligan, and this is where Billy's nightmare truly began. Chalmer was violent and sadistic. He physically abused Billy and his siblings, but Billy received the worst of it. He was beaten, buried alive as punishment, and was hung from a barn rafter. This wasn't discipline, this was systematic torture of a child. And Billy's mind did the only thing it could to survive. It fractured. Dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder, is one of the most severe and controversial diagnoses in psychiatry. It doesn't just happen. It's not genetic. It's not something you're born with. DID is the mind's last defense mechanism against unbearable trauma, almost always extreme childhood abuse. When a child experiences trauma so severe that their developing brain cannot process it, cannot integrate it into their sense of self, the mind splits. It creates separate identities, separate people, who can hold the pain, the memories, the emotions that the original personality, the core self, cannot bear to experience. These aren't just mood shifts or different sides of someone's personality. These are fully formed, distinct individuals with their own names, ages, genders, memories, skills, and even different physiological responses. They can have different handwriting, different voices, different levels of intelligence, even different eyeglass prescriptions. And most disturbingly, they often have no awareness of each other. When one personality is in control, the others are essentially unconscious, leaving gaps in memory that the person cannot explain. Let's talk about who these people were, because understanding them is crucial to understanding what happened in 1977. Billy's personalities were divided into two groups: the 10 who were allowed to take control of the body, and the 13 who were kept suppressed, locked away because they were considered too dangerous or too damaged. The core personality, the original Billy, was referred to as the undesirables. He was confused, suicidal, and unable to function. He was the child who experienced the abuse, and he couldn't handle consciousness, so the other personalities took over. Billy's mind created 10 primary personalities who were allowed to control the body, each designed for a specific purpose. There was Arthur, the rational British intellectual who managed the system; Reagan, the violent Yugoslavian protector filled with rage; Tommy, the escape artist and mechanic; and others, each with their own age, gender, skills, and memories. Some were children frozen at the age when specific traumas occurred. Some were adults created to handle what the children couldn't bear. They operated like a committee, with Arthur deciding who could take control and when. But the most disturbing personality wasn't one of these. It was the teacher. The teacher was the fusion of all 23 personalities, minus the core Billy. When the teacher appeared, he had access to all their memories, all their skills, all their knowledge. He was terrifyingly intelligent and completely aware of everything that had ever happened to Billy. These were just the 10 allowed personalities. The other 13 were kept locked away in what Arthur called the spot, a mental prison where dangerous or unstable personalities were suppressed. We don't know much about most of them because Arthur kept them hidden, but their existence shows just how fractured Billy's mind truly was. Now imagine living like this. Imagine waking up in places you don't remember going to. Imagine finding things in your pockets you don't remember stealing. Imagine people calling you by names you've never heard, telling you about conversations you don't remember having. This was Billy Milligan's entire life. He lost time constantly. Hours, days, sometimes weeks would vanish as other personalities took control. He was a passenger in his own body, and most of the time, He didn't even know it. In October 1977, 3 women on the Ohio State University campus were kidnapped at gunpoint, robbed, driven to remote locations, and raped. The attacks were brutal and terrifying, but they also had strange inconsistencies that police couldn't explain. The attacker was described as polite, almost apologetic at times. He seemed confused about his own actions. One victim reported that during the assault, the man's voice changed, his accent shifted, and he seemed to become a different person mid-attack. After the third assault, police identified Billy Milligan through campus security footage and witness descriptions. They arrested him, expecting a straightforward prosecution, but when they began questioning him, something was immediately wrong. Billy had no memory of the crimes, not in the way someone lies about an alibi, but in the way someone genuinely has no idea what you're talking about. During interrogations, his behavior was erratic. His voice changed, his posture changed. He referred to himself by different names. The police thought he was faking, putting on an act to avoid responsibility. But then the psychiatrists got involved. Dr. Cornelia Wilbur, the same psychiatrist who had documented the famous case of Sybil Dorset, another person with multiple personalities, was brought in to examine Billy. What she found was unprecedented. Over the course of multiple sessions, Dr. Wilbur and her team documented and interviewed 24 distinct personalities. These weren't performances. The physiological differences were measurable. Different personalities had different brainwave patterns on EEGs. Their handwriting was forensically distinct. Some personalities could speak languages the others couldn't. Some had allergies the others didn't. This wasn't acting, this was real. The defense team faced an impossible challenge. How do you defend someone who didn't commit the crime, but whose body did? How do you hold someone responsible for actions they have no memory of, no control over, no awareness of? The prosecution argued that Billy Milligan was faking, that this was an elaborate scheme to avoid punishment, but the evidence was overwhelming. Multiple independent psychiatrists confirmed the diagnosis. The personalities were documented, interviewed, observed. This wasn't a hoax. In December 1978, Billy Milligan became the first person in United States history to be acquitted of major crimes by reason of insanity due to dissociative identity disorder. The court ruled that Billy Milligan, the core personality, was not in control during the crimes. He was not conscious, he did not consent, and therefore he could not be held criminally responsible. But someone had to be held responsible. And that's where the case gets even more disturbing. Through extensive interviews with Billy's personalities, psychiatrists pieced together what actually happened during those assaults. It wasn't Billy. It wasn't Arthur or Reagan or Alan or any of the personalities who normally controlled the body. It was Adelana. Adelana, the 19-year-old lesbian personality who wrote poetry and desperately craved affection. Adelana, who was shy and lonely and felt invisible. She wanted to be held, to be touched, to feel wanted. So she took control of Billy's body without Arthur's permission. She broke the rules of the system, and she kidnapped those women. But here's the truly horrifying part. Adelana didn't want to hurt anyone. She wanted affection. But when she took control, she was in a male body, a body she didn't identify with, a body that had male anatomy and male strength. She didn't know how to navigate that. She didn't understand the terror she was causing. In her mind, she was seeking connection, but in reality, she was committing rape. And when the assaults were over, when Adelana retreated back into Billy's mind, she felt overwhelming shame and guilt. She knew what she had done was wrong, but she couldn't undo it. This is the nightmare of dissociative identity disorder. The personalities don't choose to exist. They were created by trauma, by a mind that was trying to survive. And sometimes, those survival mechanisms become destructive. Billy Milligan was not sent to prison. Instead, he was committed to a series of psychiatric hospitals where he would spend the next decade. The goal was integration, to fuse all 24 personalities back into one cohesive self. It's an incredibly difficult and often impossible process. You're not just asking someone to remember their trauma, you're asking 24 people to stop existing. You're asking them to give up their individuality, their identity, their very sense of self, and merge into one person. Some personalities resist, some fight back, some would rather die than integrate. Over the years, through intensive therapy, some of Billy's personalities did begin to fuse. The teacher emerged multiple times to facilitate this process. Slowly, painfully, Billy Milligan began to become one person again. But it was never complete. Even after years of treatment, some personalities remained distinct. Some refused to disappear. Billy was eventually released from psychiatric care in 1988, declared integrated enough to function in society. But his life after release was troubled. He struggled with identity, with purpose, with the weight of what his body had done. He opened a film production company, tried to make documentaries about his own case, but nothing ever came of it. He lived quietly, largely out of the public eye, until he died of cancer in 2014 at the age of 59. Billy Milligan's case forced the legal system to confront an uncomfortable reality. The mind is not always unified. Consciousness is not always singular. And when trauma fractures a person into pieces, who do you hold responsible when those pieces commit crimes? There's no easy answer. Billy didn't choose to have dissociative identity disorder. He didn't choose to be tortured as a child. He didn't choose for his mind to split into 24 people just to survive. But 3 women were still assaulted. Their trauma is real. Their suffering is real. And Billy's body, regardless of who was in control, was the instrument of that suffering. This case reveals something deeply unsettling about the nature of identity and responsibility. We like to believe that we are singular, that I is a fixed, consistent thing. But Billy Milligan's existence proves that's not always true. Sometimes I is a committee, sometimes I is a war, and sometimes the person you think you're looking at isn't even there. They're a passenger, watching through eyes they don't control, living a life they don't remember. Billy Milligan's story is not just about crime or mental illness. It's about what happens when a child's mind is broken so badly that it shatters into pieces. It's about the desperate measures the brain will take to survive. And it's about the terrible consequences when those survival mechanisms outlive their purpose. Billy Milligan was a victim, but he was also a perpetrator, and the law had to decide which one mattered more.